You're now listening to Boring Greek Myths for Sleep, the day Apollo lost a singing contest to a satyr. Hey guys. Tonight we're heading to a sun-drenched hill in ancient Greece, somewhere between myth and morning haze where a god of music is lounging like he owns the cosmos. Which, honestly, he sort of does. The air smells faintly of laurel and smugness. Apollo, crowned with golden leaves and blessed with eternally perfect hair, is leaning on his lyre as if even gravity is too respectful to bother him. Birds harmonize in his presence, not out of instinct, but peer pressure. The world tunes itself around his heartbeat, and you've been dropped right into the middle of one of those Greek myths that starts off charming, turns weird, and ends with a solid reminder that divine egos are not to be trifled with. You probably won't survive this if you're prone to secondhand embarrassment, because tonight, a literal goat man will try to outperform a god. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Curious night owls unite. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up a warm slope of time and dusty rocks. The sun doesn't shine, here it reclines. Somewhere between noon and divine indifference, Apollo is sprawled under a myrtle tree. His robe is the color of sand polished by centuries of compliments. His lyre rests on his lap, strings glinting like spider silk spun by narcissists. He isn't doing much, just plucking out melodies that cause spontaneous sunflowers to bloom. He hums a tune, one so beautiful that your brain forgets how to pronounce words for a moment. You try to look casual. He notices you anyway. Everyone notices Apollo. Even shadows lean toward him. Lovely afternoon, he says, without looking at you, as if the weather were another one of his accomplishments. That's the thing with Apollo. God of music, poetry, prophecy, healing, and archery. A bit of a resume hog. Historians still argue whether the Greeks loved him or merely tolerated his dazzling need for attention. Either way, he was the rock star of Olympus, with the mood swings of a cat and the aesthetic sensibility of a sunset influencer. But today, he's unusually chill. That's because no one's tried to outshine him for at least, 20 minutes. Boredom, for a god, is dangerous, so he composes, not just songs, but plans. He's scheming a new contest, a little public demonstration of his overwhelming superiority. It's not enough to be good. Apollo likes proving it to people who didn't ask. Just then, a cricket chirps too confidently. Apollo silences it with a minor chord. You suppress a giggle. It's worth noting that the Greeks used music in everything: philosophy, even medicine. Pythagoras believed music could heal the soul. Apollo, on the other hand, believed music could flatten your soul if you were off-key in his presence. A butterfly flits near his ear. He flicks it away with a flourish. Even insects hum in C-sharp. These days, he mutters. You sense he's craving a worthy opponent, though he'd never admit it. Gods don't duel out of insecurity. They duel because aesthetics. Somewhere far off, the wind carries the sound of a flute. Not the delicate breathy kind you'd expect from Olympus, but something raw, reedy, a bit like someone taught a goat to play jazz. Apollo lifts his head, his eyes glowing faintly with whatever color smugness is narrow in curiosity. The melody is rough, imperfect, but undeniably bold. Someone's feeling brave, he murmurs. This is the quiet before the chaos, before the forest fills with listeners, before trees lean in, and before Apollo's expression sours like old wine. There's a reason the muses are nervous. You sit beside him. He glances at you. You hear it too, don't you? You nod. It's a tune that refuses to apologize for existing. And in a world run by perfection, that's practically a declaration of war. From behind the hills, the music grows louder. You Imagine cracked reeds, muddy hooves, and someone with way too much self-confidence and not enough self-preservation. Someone who hasn't been properly warned. Apollo never plays for fun. There's an old, quirky tidbit. Some scrolls mentioned Apollo once invented a musical scale so complicated, it gave a philosopher nosebleeds. Whether that's true or not, what is true is that even other gods tread carefully when Apollo's tuning up. And today, he's not tuning, he's listening. You lean back, grass tickling your shoulders, the sun beginning to ease into honey light. Somewhere nearby, Apollo's fingers tighten around his lyre. I do hope, he says in a voice like sharpened velvet, they're interesting. Because for once, even Apollo doesn't know what kind of story this is going to be. You follow the sound. It winds through trees and creeps along the forest floor, like smoke from a lazy campfire. Every few steps, it changes now, a warble, now a howl. The sort of sound that makes birds pause mid-preen. It doesn't soar like Apollo's golden hymns. It crawls, it scratches. It dares you not to like it, and somehow, you do. Eventually, you stumble upon a clearing that smells faintly of moss, pine sap, and bad decisions. In the center, barefoot and shirtless, is Marsyas, Satyr, half man, half goat, all questionable impulse control. His beard is wild, his horns curve like question marks, and his pants situation is, ... let's call it optional. He's hunched over something, a long, hollow reed. Actually, two of them, joined at one end. You recognize it as the aloe's a double-piped flute, and based on the dents and teeth marks, this one has history. See, this isn't just any instrument. It's that flute, the one Athena invented and then angrily chucked off Mount Olympus after realizing it made her cheeks puff out like an overboiled frog. Vanity, meet acoustics. Legend says the aloes fell to earth and landed in the mud, where it sulked for a few centuries until Marsyas found it. Whether that's poetic coincidence or divine setup, historians still argue. But Marsyas didn't know its past. Or maybe he didn't care. Either way, when he blew into those twin reeds for the first time, something ancient woke up. He plays now, eyes closed, body swaying like he's just barely keeping up with the song. You watch him from behind a bush, which is possibly the least majestic vantage point in all of Greek mythology. The music is hypnotic, not beautifully at least, not by Olympus standards, but honest, gritty. The kind of song you'd hear in a smoky tavern right before someone drops a plate or proposes marriage to a chair. It makes your spine feel weird things. Goosebumps you didn't order. Memories you didn't live. Marsyas stops suddenly, panting. He opens his eyes, blinking at the sky like it might drop applause. Instead, it drops a pine cone. You step out from your bush. He doesn't flinch, just wipes his forehead with the back of his arm and gives you a nod, as if you've interrupted a particularly spicy daydream. Didn't know anyone was listening, he says. His voice is hoarse, scratchy, and probably never been asked to whisper politely. You tell him his playing is interesting. He beams. You hear the wind in it, don't you? He asks, tapping the aloes, the way the forest talks. Back. You nod, even if you don't fully understand. The satyr seems to speak in riddles and tree roots. But one thing's clear, he isn't doing this to impress anyone. He's doing it because it hurts not to. There's an old inscription, half-faded, from a ruined amphitheater, that suggests rural Greeks believed music could summon local spirits. Play from the belly, it said, or don't bother the gods. Marsyas apparently took that to heart. You ask where he got the instrument, he shrugs. Found it. Fit my mouth, so I figured it was mine. You suppress a laugh. You don't know whether to applaud his logic or bury it. Then, his eyes narrow. He squints toward the west, toward that same golden hill, where Apollo still lounges like the world is a chaise longue designed just for him. I've heard the other one's good, Marsyas says casually, twirling the flute between his fingers. The shiny boy with the harp. You hesitate. Say something vague like, yeah, he's decent. Marsyas grins. Maybe I'll challenge him. Your lungs stop working for a full 2 seconds. You remind him gently that Apollo's the god of music. Literal god, capital G. But the satyr just shrugs. If the gods wanted silence, they wouldn't have made mountains echo. Quirky guy. This one. You sit together on a fallen log. He offers you a drink from a goatskin pouch that smells like fermented. Arguments. You politely decline. Think they'll let me. He muses aloud, not really asking. Think I'll be allowed to play for them? You want to say no? Or at least suggest a helmet. But something stops you. Maybe it's the way he looks at the trees, like they're judges of their own kind. Maybe it's the fact that you're rooting for him. Despite the odds, you remember a tiny historical footnotes. Some scholars believe the Marsyas story reflects an ancient cultural tension between rural folk traditions and polished urban ones. Apollo's music was for temples and courts. Marsyas, he played for dirt and dusk. The satyr stands, brushing bark from his legs. He raises the aloes again. This time, he says, I'll play loud enough to wake the sky. And he does. You don't know if the gods are listening, but the trees definitely are. One leans just slightly closer. A squirrel freezes mid-snack. Even the wind stops pretending not to care. And far off on the hill, Apollo's head tilts just slightly to the side. You return to Apollo's hillside, and he's still there, reclining, as if gravity never quite won the argument. His lyre now rests beside him on a cushion of moss that seems, unnaturally, to resist dirt. He doesn't look surprised when you reappear, just raises one eyebrow and says, so? It's the flute then. You nod awkwardly. He sits upright with fluid, lazy grace. They always dig something up, he mutters, almost to himself. Old weapons, lost oaths, flutes made by vain goddesses, with bad cheekbones. He stretches his arms skyward. Fine, let him challenge me. You feel the atmosphere tense, like even the birds are holding their breath. A challenge, a contest. It begins the way many terrible ideas in Greek mythology begin, with confidence, goat hooves, and zero legal counsel. You escort Marsyas into the clearing. Apollo is already there, standing barefoot on Dooky's grass, tuning his lyre. The crowd, yes, a crowd has assembled, emerges, as if the forest itself, RSVPD. Dryads lean from tree trunks. Nymphs gather in clusters, gossiping in musical tones. 2 grumpy centaurs carry wine like this is going to be a long day. Even the muses show up, though they're careful to keep their distance. They've seen this movie before. Marsyas steps forward. His chest is puffed, his tail eyes twitchy. He doesn't bow, but he nods. A polite I might die, but I'll die loud. Apollo returns the nod. Then, to your horror, he smiles. That's never good. A makeshift stage is marked with river stones. Apollo steps up and, without ceremony, begins to play. Oh boy. The lyre's sound is pure syrup. Every note glows. Birds harmonize mid-flight. Clouds pause, uncertain if they should turn pink. It's so divine that your teeth tingle slightly. You glance around and see several listeners wiping away tears. One tree sheds leaves in slow applause. Apollo finishes with a flourish so elegant, it might have caused mild envy in Poseidon's mirror. He looks at Marsyas. Your turn. And Marsyas just shrugs, raises the aloes to his lips, and blows. It's loud, not in the dramatic way, just loud. Loud like an awkward party entrance. But then it changes. The dual reeds of the flutes sing over and under each other, weaving a tapestry of sound that doesn't shimmer, it stomps. You hear thunder in it, roots, rain, the kind of music that doesn't ask permission to exist. The crowd leans forward. You see a shepherd's dog whimper, then wag its tail. A nymph's lips part in shock. Even Apollo's smile has twitched a little into something less confident. Historically, Greeks held music contests in actual amphitheaters. But this is the wild version. The one sung in places without seats, without scripts. The muses whisper amongst themselves. One of them, Clio maybe, is scribbling frantically on a scroll that smells like lavender and judgment. The two performers circle each other now, Apollo with posture like polished marble, Marsyas with legs too springy to take seriously, but his notes have bite. Then, Marsyas does something bold. He improvises. He starts stomping, tapping the rhythm with his hoof, like a heartbeat. Then, he layers and trills some sharp, some smooth until it becomes a sound you didn't know your spine could react to. The audience gasps, but not in mockery, in recognition. They feel it too. Here's the fringe fact of the day. Some modern scholars argue that the Marsyas myth hides remnants of older shamanic rituals where music was used to enter ecstatic states, to merge with nature or commune with spirits. That wild, hypnotic sound Marsyas channels. It's not just entertainment. It's otherworldly. Apollo interrupts the moment by strumming his lyre. Once, twice. A chord so rich it's practically smug. And then because, of course he speaks mid-performance. Let us raise the stakes, he says. Let us play and sing. The crowd murmurs. Singing? That wasn't part of the agreement. Marsyas lowers his flute. Sing. Yes, Apollo says, casually plucking notes that sound like flirting in harp form. Let us see who is truly the god of music. Historians still argue whether this change was pre-planned, sabotage, or divine showboating. One papyrus from Alexandria hints that the contest rules were never clear to begin, with Marsyas may have walked into a test he didn't understand. You glance at the muses. None of them look surprised. One of them sighs and sips something suspiciously pink. Marsyas hesitates. You see it in his eyes. He can't sing while playing the aloes. It takes both hands, both lungs. There's no room left for a voice. But Apollo can strum and hum and seduce reality itself. Marsyas licks his lips. Fine, he says. Let's play it your way. Apollo bows. I already was. There it is, again that smile. The one that says he's already written the ending. You. Shift on your ruck. This isn't going to end well. You can feel it in your bones. The wind has gone quiet. Even the trees seem to lean away, politely refusing to be witnesses. Marsyas raises the flute again, but slower this time, and somewhere, in the back of your mind, you hear a faint melody falter. Marsyas steps forward into the ring of river stones, the aloes in hand, though something in his stance has changed. He's no longer bounding with that reckless, hoof-heavy bravado. Now he's still, heavy, like a tree that knows the storm is already inside the bark. You settle into the moss, watching this unfold with the same tension one might feel watching a squirrel juggle knives. Apollo stands opposite him, golden and unbearable. He tunes a single string on his lyre with exaggerated care, as if the entire cosmos depends on G-sharp being emotionally resonant. A crowd has fully gathered now. Nymphs dangle from tree limbs like glittery ornaments. One centaur braids another's tail in nervous distraction. Even Pettiness, that Pettiness arrived, chewing a stalk of fennel and side-eyeing Apollo with an expression that could curdle ambrosia. And just as the last note from Apollo's tune fades, some feather-light thing that sounds like sunshine landing on a peony, Marsyas begins to play. He does not sing. He just plays. No clever footwork this time, no flashy trills, just a deep, slow melody that drags itself from the soil. It's not a song so much as a memory, one that tastes like rain and smells faintly of sheep and pine smoke, the kind of tune that might have been hummed by someone lost in the woods, or someone waiting for bread to rise. You feel yourself sinking into it. Time slows, a dragonfly freezes in midair. A fig falls from a tree with such gravity it deserves applause. And for a breathless moment, you forget that this is a contest. But Apollo doesn't. He claps, once, smiling too brightly. Beautiful, he says. But let us not forget the terms. You've played, now you must sing. Marsyas lowers the flute. That wasn't part of the agreement. Apollo spreads his arms. Then it is now. One of the dryads leans over and whispers to her sister, classic Apollo move. Her sister nods and rolls her eyes with the force of a solar eclipse. You can feel it, that quiet mutiny in the crowd. They love Apollo, but they know this is unfair. Still, he's a god, and gods make the rules. Retroactively, if necessary. There's a little-known vase fragment from Boeotia, badly cracked and mostly ignored. That shows Marsyas holding a scale in one hand and the aloes in the other, as if weighing justice and art. Scholars don't agree on its meaning, but standing here, watching him hesitate, you think maybe it wasn't metaphorical. Maybe Marsyas knew what it meant to be mortal in the face of divinity. Still he tries. He breathes into the aloes again, but this time forces a vocal hum through his nose, awkward and at odds with the melody. It's like trying to whistle and yawn at the same time. A goat bleats in solidarity. A pine cone falls dramatically nearby. Apollo doesn't let him finish. He raises his lyre and strums a chord so lovely it rewrites the silence. Then he sings, "Oh boy, you want to hate it. You want to find it pretentious. But no, it's otherworldly." His voice is velvet poured over moonlight, the kind of sound that makes flowers bloom out of season. It's technically flawless, emotionally manipulative, and devastatingly catchy. If this were a reality show, he'd already have a record deal and an oat milk sponsorship. The crowd swoons. One nymph faints. A squirrel clutches its heart. A cicada stops mid-chirp and whispers, "Wow." Apollo ends with a graceful bow. The silence that follows is not really silent. It's loaded. Like the moment after a toast, when no one's sure if it's over. You glance at Marsyas. He's still holding the aloes, but he's not playing it anymore. He just stares at Apollo with the kind of expression that belongs to poets right before they drink something fatal and fashionable. Still, he bows. Not deeply, but sincerely. And that says more than applause ever could. "Your rules," he says quietly. "Your victory." For a moment, even Apollo looks surprised. Perhaps he expected outrage, or tears, or a dramatic satyr tantrum. But Marsyas just places the aloes on the ground and steps back into the forest. No tantrum. No begging. Just dignity. And that, dear listener, is what makes the trees begin to murmur. You don't hear words, exactly. Just a rustling like gossip whispered in chlorophyll. The forest has opinions, and it's not sure Apollo deserves this win. Even the river running nearby seems to hesitate, waiting for something that doesn't arrive. You sit in the dirt, dazed, because this wasn't just a music contest. This was a morality play disguised as a concert. And you have the sinking feeling that things are far from over. Somewhere deep in the woods, a single owl hoots, low, slow, Judgy, because gods may win but the earth always remembers. You sit in the aftermath. The applause has faded. The muses have quietly wandered off, mumbling something about dinner plans and divine drama fatigue. Even the centaurs have retreated, one of them dragging a half-finished wine jug with the solemnity of a funeral procession. But Apollo, he stands alone in the clearing, basking in the sort of uncomfortable silence that follows an unearned standing ovation. He spins his lyre slowly in one hand, its strings humming softly, perhaps out of guilt, or boredom, or maybe it's just the wind pretending to be music to keep the mood from collapsing entirely. You glance toward the woods, where Marsyas disappeared, and feel the weight of something unresolved. And judging by the way the leaves have stopped rustling, the trees agree. Apollo finally breaks the quiet. "Well," he says, brushing non-existent dust from his perfect white robe that was rustic. "You don't answer." The smug is too thick in the air, it might actually be flammable. Then, perhaps sensing the mood, Apollo begins playing again. This time, softer, slower. His fingers glide over the strings like water trickling through memory. It's undeniably beautiful, but there's something in it now that wasn't there before. A hesitation, a flaw, like a mirror starting to crack. At the edge, you recognize the melody. He's playing Marsyas's song, not note for note, but the soul of it, earthier than anything Apollo's ever touched. And for once, it doesn't sound like he's showing off. It sounds like he's listening. Too little, too late. Because the forest, dear listener, has already made its decision. There's a murmur among the branches, a sound that starts low, then swells not like applause, but like protest. One dryad hurls a pin cone at Apollo's foot. He ignores it. Another starts weeping sap. It's all getting very awkward, very fast. And then comes the judgment. A wind blows in, not gentle, not breezy, cold. It curls around Apollo's ankles, rising like a chill from an unseen well. Suddenly, you remember a curious historical detail. In some older versions of the Marsyas mythos, rare, regional tales whispered in mountain villages, the satyr wins. Not by skill, not by vote, but by awakening something older than the gods. A kind of moral current beneath the stones. Back in the clearing, Apollo frowns. This is absurd, he mutters. I won. You want to believe him, truly, but the trees aren't buying it. A hush falls as Marsyas re-emerges. He's not holding the aloes. His hands are empty, and his expression is unreadable, not defeated, not angry. Just, present, like a storm that isn't. Interested in whether you brought an umbrella. He walks back into the circle of stones, and stands silently before Apollo. What? Is it now? Apollo asks. A rematch. A poem about losing gracefully. Marsyas says nothing, and then he, Kneels, not in submission. In ceremony, he places his palms on the ground, and listens. The forest tilts. You swear you feel the trees leaning, and the earth humming low beneath your spine. And then Marsyas speaks. Not loudly, not to the crowd, not even to Apollo. He speaks to the roots. I sang with breath, he says. Now I ask the earth to sing back. You laugh quietly, nervously, because this is either brilliant, mythic theater, or something is about to go wildly off script. Apollo, for his part, scoffs. You're praying to dirt. Marsyas doesn't move, doesn't blink, and then the ground shifts. Not violently, but enough that you feel your weight move differently. A small quake of attention, and something rises. A sound, faint, but growing. It's music from below. Not a melody you'd recognize. There are no notes, no rhythm, just vibration, resonance, like the hum of time itself, remembering it once had. A voice. Apollo steps back. The wind coils around his ankles again. His golden sandals flicker like candlelight in a storm. The forest has found its harmony, and it's not on. Apollo's side. You watch as he tries to play again, but the strings won't sing. They buzz. They fight him. The lyre whines like a child, dragged away from a feast. Marsyas, still kneeling, opens his eyes. They reflect not the sky, but the soil. Your song ends in marble halls, he says softly. Mine lives in caves in bark and blood. It's not a threat, it's an echo, a wild little scholarly tidbit. Some believe Marsyas symbolized an older pre-Olympian order representing the chthonic underworld, earthy deities, displaced by the bright, newer gods of Olympus. In that reading, Marsyas isn't just a satyr, he's the echo of what was before. Apollo lowers his lyre. You don't know if it's defeat or disgust, but he leaves, just turns robe swirling, sandals silent hand, walks out of the clearing without a word. The crowd parts. No applause, this time, no laurels, just silence, deep and wide as myth. You sit there, stunned. Marsys rises, brushes pine needles from his knees. and walks the other way into the woods. No fanfare, no parade. Just a man and a story. Only trees, remember correctly. You linger long after they've both gone. Apollo, with his stinging pride. Marsyas with his muddy silence. The clearing breathes again. The tension seeps out of the soil like last night's dream. Nymphs whisper in slow spirals, not quite gossiping. More like cataloging each syllable, drifting like falling feathers. A cricket resumes its solo in the grass, cautiously at first. Then, with the confidence of someone who's realized no gods are around to smite off-key chirps. But you're not done. Not yet. You follow the path Marsyas took, hoofprints pressed lightly into damp earth. They're deeper than before, as if the weight of the moment has etched itself into the trail. You pass under a twisted bow and come upon him beside a brook, his back to a gnarled tree, fingers tracing the water's surface. The aloes lies beside him, abandoned, but not broken. He doesn't look up when you approach. "I didn't win," he says, almost conversationally, as if you'd asked. "But I didn't lose either. And that's it, isn't it?" That's the real crux of this crooked myth. Marsyas challenged a god, and lived. Scarred, maybe, mocked, sure, but unbroken. You sit beside him. The silence between you is oddly comfortable. Water babbles around smooth rocks. Somewhere overhead, a hawk circles. You get the sense that the world, after bearing witness to such divine pettiness, is relieved to get back to bird calls and gentle erosion. "I used to think music was something gods gave to mortals," Marsyas murmurs, "like a gift, a bone, tossed down from Olympus." You glance sideways, but it's not, he continues. It's something we dragged out of ourselves, from the gut, from grief. The gods, ... they polish it, but we bleed it. Somewhere. A chorus of frogs agrees emphatically. There's an oddly obscure archaeological tidbit scholars love to argue over: an Etruscan terracotta plaque found in the ruins of a collapsed temple. It shows a satyr playing the aloes while crying. One tear, stylized like a vine, winding into the instrument. No label, no explanation. Just that single image, grief and music as the same breath. You realize Marsyas may not even know how famous he'll become in fragments, in footnotes, in pottery. You ask him quietly if he regrets it. He chuckles, a sound like bark splitting in summer heat. "Regret," he repeats, "that's a human luxury." Then he leans back, eyes half-lidded. "I wanted to know if my sound mattered, if it could stand beside theirs, even for a heartbeat." You don't answer, because it did. And somewhere deep in the woods, you get the sense that the forest hasn't stopped humming. Not quite. It's carried his song, bent it into roots, whistled it through reeds, whispered it into hollow logs where children might someday sit and wonder why the wind sounds sad and brave at the same time. Historians still argue whether it happened like this. You say aloud, half to yourself, or if it's just a metaphor. Marsyas smirks. "Let them argue. I'd rather play." He reaches for the aloes but stops halfway. Not today. Instead, he dips his hand into the stream, watches the water spiral through his fingers. "Music's like this," he murmurs. You don't hold it. You just let it pass through. The sky is shifting now, honey fading into soft lavender. Shadows stretch like yawns. A lone firefly tests its glow. The satyr pulls a fig from a satchel and tosses it to you. It's sun-warm, a little bruised. You bite in. It tastes like dust and sugar and something you can't name. You both sit in stillness. And then, in the gentlest of ironies, you hear it again, Apollo's melody drifting faintly from a nearby ridge, practicing, repeating, as if he, too, can't quite forget what happened. Because here's the quiet joke that no one tells at symposiums. Even gods can't let go of a haunting tune. You lie back on the moss, arms crossed behind your head, and stare at the deepening sky. Somewhere, in this myth, you realize there is no winner. Only music had those brave enough to make it, without divine approval. The air smells of cypress and melancholy, and Marsyas begins to hum, just a single note, low, not beautiful, not perfect, but his. You wake or rather, drift back into awareness with the sound of leaves clapping lightly above you. Marsyas is gone. No dramatic farewell, no satyr-shaped hole in the moss. Just his scent like wild thyme and something unbrushed and hoofprints. That dissolves the farther you follow. The forest has settled. A kind of afterglow, like the hush after a campfire song, hums all around. But Apollo, he's still somewhere nearby. You can feel it, and as you crest a ridge, there he is, alone, seated on a flat stone, worn smooth by time and teenage demigods. His lyre rests in his lap, untouched. Instead, he's staring into a pool of water so still, it might actually be judging him. You pause, uncertain, then step forward. He doesn't look up. I suppose you've come to gloat, he says. You blink. This is new. Apollo rarely leads with insecurity. I'm not sure I won. He adds quietly. You don't say anything because... ... Yeah. He traces a finger across the lyre's neck. They were supposed to love it, he mutters. They always do. It's perfect. You sit beside him. The silence between you is more awkward than anything Marsyas ever played. Apollo turns his head. There's something in his expression that you wouldn't have believed possible 2 days ago. Doubt, or maybe, ... envy. Do you know what it's like, he says, to craft a melody so flawless that it loops back on itself like light through a prism only, to have it dismissed as cold? You do not, but you nod anyway. His music wasn't refined, Apollo continues. It was raw. Like it had never been told it needed to sound good. And the people, those fickle forest things, they loved it for that. You lean back and look at the sky, which has gone from dusk to a kind of shy plum. A few stars blink like they're not sure this is the right party. I didn't change the rules to be cruel, Apollo says suddenly. I changed them to win. Same difference, you want to say. But don't instead. You ask, do you regret it? He scoffs. Regret? I'm a god. Then, softer, but I've been thinking about it more than I should. There's a tiny historical fact buried in a damaged hymn to Apollo, barely readable, but intriguing. It mentions a moment when Apollo refused to play music for a full decade, after a contest soured by pride. Scholars think it's metaphor. Maybe it's this. You turn the question back on him. Would you still have one if you'd played by the original rules? He doesn't answer. Instead, he picks up his lyre and tries a few soft plucks. The notes are delicate, shy, almost apologetic. Then, without warning, he starts to mimic Marsyas's melody, the rhythm, the pulse. He adds embellishments, lifts the tempo, tweaks the phrasing, but it's there. The bones of the song, the mud, the wind. You realize something then? He's learning it. Not stealing, not polishing, learning. That's when it clicks. Apollo didn't just defeat a rival. He discovered a language he didn't know he needed. And maybe, deep down, he hated how much he admired it. There's an argument among classicists whether Apollo's punishment of Marsyas, in the darker endings of the myth, was about cruelty or shame. Some say the god couldn't stand being challenged. Others say he couldn't stand being moved by something outside his control. You ask him if he ever thanked Marsyas. He laughs bitterly. No. Would he? A pause? I might, he says. But not out loud. Progress. You lie there with him, god and mortal, amid the rustle of unseen wings and the lull of starlight. A constellation begins to form overhead, a swan, maybe, or a satyr with a flute. Hard to tell at this angle. And then Apollo asks you the question no one expects from a god of perfection. Do you think music is supposed to hurt a little? You nod. He plucks a note. That's what I thought. You leave Apollo behind, not rudely, not abruptly, just gently. He doesn't stop you. He keeps playing, eyes fixed on the water, letting the notes guide him somewhere even he can't name. And that's fine. Gods don't always need closure, just a softer key to play in. You wander. The forest is different now. Not just quiet or deep, like it has expanded somehow, unfurling more of itself in the spaces left behind by that strange contest. Every leaf seems to hum with memory. Every breeze has a whisper tucked inside, and a head, nestled in a fold of mossy earth. You find them, again the audience. Still there, not just watching, but remembering. A dryad lounges against a willow trunk, humming the flute tune. A centaur carefully etches lyrics into bark. Even a tortoise has shuffled its way into the perimeter. Perhaps late to the show, but determined to catch the rerun. They're not waiting for Apollo. They're processing Marsyas, because this wasn't just a performance, it was a crack in the wall, a tear in the curtain of who's allowed to create beauty for the first time in anyone's memory. The divine wasn't the only thing sacred. You settle into the grass beside a nymph who's plaiting wildflowers into her hair. You saw it, she asks, not looking up. You nod. She smiles faintly. It was ugly. It was wonderful. That sums it up. And just then, from deep within the grove, a sound starts. Not a flute, not a lyre. Something simpler, clapping, but not human. The kind of clapping trees might do, in slow, syncopated gusts. Branches tapping lightly together, leaves brushing palms like applause in a language older than Greek. Even the sky seems to participate. A meteor streaks lazily across it, as if winking at you for staying this long. One of the muses, Melpomene, maybe emerges from behind a tree, her robe wrinkled, her expression uncharacteristically soft. She sits beside you, doesn't speak for a while, just listens with you to the forest's quiet celebration. Then, in a voice like cracked parchment in rain, she says, "He sang something we didn't know we missed." You ask her if he'll be remembered. She shrugs. By the roots, always. By mortals, sometimes by the gods. She tilts her head thoughtfully, only when it makes them uncomfortable. And maybe that's the true myth, the one you don't find on frescoes or amphory. Not the contest, not the punishment, not even the music itself, but the way a single satyr made an entire pantheon squirm. Here's an odd fringe tidbit. A fragment of a lost comedy by Aristophanes supposedly featured Marsyas as a sweaty, shouting flute player who challenges Zeus to a dance-off. Scholars debate if it's parody, homage, or just weird. But the point is he lasted. Even in ridicule, he endured. You lie back. The moss feels richer here. The kind of place dreams like to visit when you're not paying attention. And all, at once the audience begins to mimic that low, earthy tune, humming it, tapping it, some whistling through their fingers, others snapping twigs in rhythm. Not perfectly, not together, but with the same heart that Marsyas played from. You realize, they're not trying to recreate the performance. They're echoing it, passing it along, like folklore or pollen. You think of Apollo again, high above, plucking away at his flawless strings, and you wonder if, in a year or a century, he'll remember the feeling of this moment more than the win. Because you know who doesn't need to win anymore? Marsyas. He's in the trees now, the roots, the rhythm, the muddy fingernails of creation. And honestly, isn't that the real prize? The world didn't end when he challenged the gods. It changed. You sit very still, and let the forest sing you into stillness. You wake to moonlight. No trumpet blast, no dramatic satyr snore, just the gentle hush of a forest that's finally, at peace. The grove is empty now. The muses have melted into mist. The centaurs have trotted off to wherever large, melodramatic creatures spend their evenings. Even the frogs are quieter. The forest has returned to its default mode, whispering. You stretch slowly, not wanting to disturb the silence too much. It wraps around you like a blanket made of pine scent and distant lullabies. And then, as if on cue, a new sound trickles in, rippling water, You follow it, padding barefoot over moss and stone, until you reach a narrow stream, and you stop because you recognize it. The same stream Marsyas knelt beside, but it's different now, smoother, wiser. It runs clearer, though no less wild. And beside it stands a small statue, half hidden by ivy, worn down by time and maybe intentional forgetfulness. The figure is unmistakably him, Marsyas, lean, horned, mid-step. Aloes raise two lips that are more determined than serene. You brush some moss from the base and find a tiny inscription in crumbling Doric script. It reads, "He played, and the gods blinked." Just that dot. You sit by the statue and dangle your feet in the stream. The water is cold, but not cruel. It babbles, but not mindlessly. It almost sounds like ... singing. Not a full melody, just fragments. A phrase here, a tremble there, as if the stream is still trying to remember the full song. You close your eyes and lean back, letting the memory come. You see him again, not the myth, not the cautionary tale, but Marsyas as he was dirt-smudged, bold, deeply unqualified to be taking on the sun god of Olympus, and doing it anyway. That's the part that sticks with you, not the duel, not the trick, not even the unfairness of it all, but the audacity, the sheer hoof-stomping, reed-blowing nerve of it. And maybe that's what everyone secretly loved, that someone dared, that someone pointed at the marble perfection of the divine and said, "Sure, but have you heard this?" It didn't matter that he lost. It mattered that he tried. There's an old, unfinished hymn, just a few lines, scrawled into the back of a shepherd's tablet. "Let the god have his crown," it reads, "but let the goat keep the wind." Scholars have debated its meaning for centuries. You think you get it now? Because Marsyas didn't need a prize. He became the echo, and echoes, dear listener, tend to outlast the original shout. You lie down by the stream, head resting on a patch of time, and let your mind float, somewhere above. The stars realign themselves into shapes no one will name for another 1,000 years. One looks suspiciously like a flute, another like a smirk. You wonder, did Apollo learn anything? Did the muses? Did the audience, sipping their nectar and muttering about meter? Probably not all at once, but maybe, just maybe, something shifted. Maybe somewhere a young nymph picks up an instrument no one taught her to play and decides she doesn't care. If it's not divine enough, maybe that's Marsyas's real victory. Not in applause, not in laurels, but in permission. Permission to sound different, to be wild, to try. And suddenly, as your eyes grow heavier, you hear a soft laugh. It could be wind, could be memory, could be a satyr in the bushes, delighted that you finally got it. You smile, close your eyes, and let the sound of the river carry you gently, rhythmically, into dreams. You dream, not the usual chaos of floating sandwiches and mysterious elevators, but something quieter, older, a dream that feels more like a memory you inherited than one you made in it. You're walking barefoot through a vast field of reeds. The sky is deep violet. The wind hums low, like a lullaby played on a wooden flute by someone who's never cared much for precision. You follow the path because it seems to know where it's going, even if you don't toad, and then you hear it. A note, just one, long and low and cracked around the edges. You turn toward it, and there he is, Mars, not quite the same as before, a little more blurred around the edges, a little less tethered to time. But his eyes are exactly the same, defiant, curious, exhausted. He raises the out, not to play, but to offer it to you. You reach for it. It's warm, heavier than expected, and before you can ask anything, he's gone, dissolved into breeze, or red. Or maybe he was never really separate from the world to begin with. You bring the aloes to your lips, and you play. No notes you recognize. No rhythm that makes academic sense. But it comes out anyway. Your breath becoming music. Your body remembering a song it was never taught, and far off. You think you hear Apollo's lyre, joining in. Not to compete, but to follow. You wake slowly, still by the river, still beneath the watchful trees. But something has shifted in the air. You sit up, the statue of Marsyas is gone. No footprints, no stone, just a ring of flattened moss and the faint smell of time. You listen hard, half hoping, half afraid, but there's only birdsong, distant, unconcerned. You rise and begin walking back through the forest. The morning is soft and blue, the kind that makes promises it won't keep, but in a nice way. Dew clings to your ankles. Light filters through the trees like it's deciding which leaves are worthy, and in the distance, on the wind you hear music. No divine fanfare, just a flute, one you recognize. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it always was. The forest fades behind you now, gently, as if it too is slipping into sleep. You can still feel the cool touch of moss underfoot, the distant hush of river over stone, and the echo of a satyr's breath in every lull between your thoughts. There's no more rush, no more rivalry, just the soft exhale of a story settling back into the earth. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw loosen. You've walked through myth and melody, through challenge and silence, and now it's time to let all of that go. Like the stream that carried away Apollo's pride, like the notes that rose from Marsyas's breath and drifted into legend, not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. Let yourself become like that song, not loud, not polished, just true. The stars overhead are quiet now, their glow softened by distance and time. The reeds around the river bend without breaking, and somewhere, though you may never find it again, the grove, where a god was humbled and a satyr stood tall, still waits, eternal and unmoving, deep in the heart of a story that never truly ends. So rest now, let the music fade, let the night take the weight from your bones, the tension from your breath, and leave only quiet, soft, steady quiet. You did well to come this far, and now, it's time to sleep. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.